Hello, everyone. So I just want to start off by saying this is not going to be a technical security talk. Instead, in this talk, I hope to challenge how you approach security in your daily digital life and how you can make your site more secure through challenging your thinking about security. So I want to start off by talking about perception and how that influences our websites. Perception is foundational to understanding how people experience and interpret the world. It affects how we interact with others, how we make decisions, how we recall and interpret memories, how we learn new concepts, and how we understand reality itself. This is one of the most long-standing and pervasive perceptions about WordPress. Anybody that's been to a local meetup or even WordCamps and talked with people that use WordPress, they've inevitably heard this at some point. But why is this the perception of WordPress, and where does it come from? Is it true? And if not, why can this be so hard to invalidate? There's a quote from To Kill a Mockingbird that people generally see what they look for and hear what they listen for. This can be intentional or subconscious, but when you hear WordPress is insecure, you tend to go out and look for information to either confirm that or learn more about that. And so generally you'll find information leading you to believe more strongly that WordPress is in fact insecure. People are more likely to share negative experiences over positive ones. This is a phenomenon that has been supported by research in psychology, sociology, communication. And it's called negativity bias, and it causes us to pay more attention to the negative events because they could represent threats to us. Negative experiences tend to be remembered more vividly and retold in greater detail. And so as we interact with community members, this is why this perception forms in our mind, and it's more strong than WordPress is secure. Nowadays, social media and our new means of communication amplify this. Negativity drives engagement, and this negative content and negative perceptions, they're amplified. Leads us to thinking that there's something like this out there trying to get our website. Instead, how can we search for the truth and understand it better? What actually affects our WordPress site security? So let's strip back that bias and personal experience, because that is not the reality. The reality of WordPress is it can be secure. WordPress is just software. It does what it's told. The security of WordPress install is dependent on the decisions that we make about the surrounding circumstances and conditions of the environment that our website lives on. It can only be as secure as our behavior and what we choose to acknowledge and not ignore. What we don't understand influences our security of our site. And we think about security very differently for our websites than we do about our physical world. We often lock away documents in a safe to hide important information from even people that we trust to let into our house. If we have children, we make decisions all the time about, do we keep them home or do we allow them out into the world? Who do they get to see? Where do they get to go? And these are all security-related decisions. Another example is your car keys. When you go to a concert, you're not going to leave your car keys in the ignition or on the dashboard in your car. When you go to dinner at a restaurant and you use the restroom, you probably won't leave the keys on the table. But if you go to dinner at a friend's house where mostly trusted acquaintances are there, you might leave them on the table or near the door. But what about inside your own home? Do you place them by the door? Do you place them on the kitchen counter? Locking them in a safe is not realistic. So this is a common, more and more common vulnerability that's being exploited where in under a minute, this team will steal this car. And the people got home, they put their keys in their home, and they assumed that they were safe because the keys were physically inside their home. Instead, what they do is they use a relay to intercept certain key fobs, which continuously broadcast the signal to unlock cars, and they relay it to the car. And they're able to unlock the car, they're able to get in, start the ignition, and drive away with the car. Again, it's unrealistic to lock the keys in a safe every time you get home, but you need to decide what an acceptable level of risk is for you. Things are not always as they seem. In this case, they were very creative and they were able to very easily gain access to this car and drive away. This insecurity of our websites can be considered as chaining certain factors that in isolation may be secure, but when combined, they're insecure. For example, maybe you have a cross-site scripting vulnerability that allows someone to take advantage of a SQL injection exploit. The unit tests passed, but the integration tests were missing. This is a fun quote from a security expert about how a system is only truly secure if it's locked and in a block of concrete and guarded with armed guards. In complete isolation, WordPress is extremely secure. This hardly ever makes sense, though. With very few exceptions, software is meant to be used or be useful to humans, especially when your mission of the software is democratized publishing. We want to make our site accessible to as many people as possible. We want to generate as much revenue as possible. We want our opinions and our voice to be heard. Is WordPress still secure when we allow people in from the world? 43.6% of the web is powered by WordPress, and sites like the New York Post, NASA.gov, the White House, they all use WordPress. More locally, I learned yesterday that the department in the Filipino government that hosts websites for government agencies requires you to use WordPress. If you want to use another platform, you have to actually find an external vendor. These are sites that are very important and would not use WordPress if it could not be secure. According to Cloudflare, the global internet traffic grew over 17% last year. WordPress accounted for 53% of all CMS traffic across the top 5,000 domains. And as of May 2024, WordPress has re-entered a phase of growth. These combination of numbers and volumes of traffic make WordPress a very large surface area for attacks. If you figure a way in, you can affect a large number of websites to accomplish your goals. But despite all of this, WordPress is still secure. Security is not an absolute. How does the WordPress project work to keep 43% of the web secure? We have a security team that is always constantly evaluating new threats, and we have a responsible disclosure policy where researchers can report vulnerabilities that they believe that they have discovered. We go through these constantly, and we frequently release security updates. The last one was 6.5.5, and in these, we ship these updates to patch as many websites as possible from these known vulnerabilities. We also have a HackerOne program since 2016. Throughout that, 230 different hackers have been thanked and received over 80,000 in rewards from our bounty program. And this represents individual contributors, third parties, researchers, all different groups of people have participated in this. But we're not just looking for vulnerabilities, we're also looking for general things happening out in the world. For example, a few years ago, there was an email scam going around where they were impersonating the security team and telling people that their site had a vulnerability, and they had to install this plugin that would allow them to fix the vulnerability. I hate to break it to you if you installed that plugin, but it was not fixing the vulnerability, and instead it was giving them access to your website. We're also constantly exploring how we can make WordPress more secure without directly patching vulnerabilities. For example, in 6.8, we plan to replace the current hashing system for passwords with bcrypt to make it more cryptographically secure. And we also are evaluating different extensions in PHP that should be required, such as the hash extension. WordPress core is not the only component, though, that contributes to a site's security. This is a number that if you run 3 of the plugins on the WordPress.org repository, which currently has 59,000, this is the number of unique combinations that you can run. WordPress is a great platform because it's so flexible, but it's also that can make it more insecure. Anyone can create a plugin with any level of experience or background, and this creates unique challenges and new perceptions. I personally find that the people that blame WordPress as insecure and the people that blame plugins as insecure is roughly about equal. Depending on what their experience was and how their site was hacked, they may believe that WordPress is insecure, or they may believe that a certain plugin was insecure. And there's multiple flavors of this perception out in the wild. It's not just the WordPress core security team that is working on vulnerabilities. The plugin team has worked really hard to find new ways to help prevent vulnerabilities in plugins in the WordPress.org directory. For example, the plugin check plugin now runs all these scans on plugins, and when they're submitted to the directory, and you must have a passing scan in order to be added and made public. This helps guard against many common coding patterns that are dangerous or could potentially result in sites being hacked. There's also several providers in the community that work with researchers to pen test different plugins and try to discover vulnerabilities in these plugins and report them. You can see in these screenshots, I took these yesterday, and there is a number of vulnerabilities that were discovered within hours of me taking that screenshot. WordPress is only software, and it can only be as secure as it's told and configured to be. Instead, I want you to think about we are insecure. Being insecure is part of the human experience. The people that build software are insecure and make mistakes, and the people that use the software are insecure and make mistakes. We are creatures of habit. We seek connection. We're driven by curiosity. We seek purpose, recognition, acknowledgement, affirmation, and we're paradoxical, selfish and altruistic, logical and emotional, and creators and destroyers. Security is not a destination. Instead, we need to challenge how we think about security. It's not about checking off a list of checkboxes to make sure our site is secure. Technology is constantly evolving, and new vulnerabilities are being discovered every day. We need to think of this instead as a continuous journey. Just as much as technology changes, so do the people that use the software. Their needs, their habits, their behaviors, their expectations, and how they interact with the technology. But how does this impact the security of our websites? And what are some human tendencies that we should look out for to keep our sites more secure? At its heart, making assumptions bypass critical thinking, communication, and making evidence-based decisions. It leads to miscommunications, unrealistic expectations, and bias. Without validating assumptions, they often lead to potentially severe missteps in the eye of security. Being human is part making mistakes. And these statements should cause concern if you see any of these. This is very much a checkbox mentality and not so much a journey where they're continuously evaluating whether they're meeting those assumptions. WordPress has largely been successful because some of the philosophies that we use, backwards compatibility, great software out of the box, striving for simplicity, and designing for the majority. When WordPress contributors make decisions on how to change the code base, they evaluate it against the 80-20 rule. Will this benefit 80% of the users of WordPress? But are you in the minority? At the scale of WordPress, 20% is tens of millions of websites. So maybe, even though it's convenient, it may not be the right option for you to leave those default settings in place. You might need to evaluate your environment and make your site more secure by catering WordPress to your specific needs. Complacency encourages reactive tendencies instead of proactive ones. So instead of preventing a vulnerability, you're waiting for one to happen and then reacting to it. It contributes to an overall lack of preparedness, and it can be very simple or complex in nature. Perhaps you don't have 2FA and you're reusing passwords from other websites, or they're not strong passwords. You haven't been hacked yet, so you assume that those passwords will continue to be secure, and you just don't cycle them, or you don't seek more secure means of authentication. One thing I've heard a couple times actually at this WordCamp is there's an update to a plugin available, but it's been working great on my site, and I've never been hacked before. Should I still look to update this plugin? It may not be a security issue currently, but you won't be prepared for one does happen. And as I said, WordPress is a very large surface area for attackers. So when a security update is released for a plugin or WordPress itself, there are people that are reverse engineering that change to figure out how to exploit that vulnerability that was fixed. And the longer you leave your site out of date, the longer you're susceptible to potentially falling victim to that exploit. I'm a firm believer that everybody at your company, from the editors and copywriters to support folks, should all understand how your website works. They don't need to know how to write PHP or JavaScript or how WordPress calls out to WordPress.org for updates to WordPress core. But they should understand how all the systems you have in place and how they interact with each other. If you don't know how these work together, you don't know what to look out for to help spot vulnerabilities and keep your site more secure. I like this saying because when you think about the systems that interact together, there is a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. So if you understand where the cracks are and where the seams are between your systems and your website, for example, for the example of light, you know where to hold up maybe a UV filter to protect yourself from dangerous lights coming through in the form of attacks. I've always hired the best, or we vetted our vendors. We're covered. Again, these are very dangerous assumptions and overconfidence that you should not, if you hear this, you should start to ask questions. Seek to understand those systems more deeply. How can you assume you're going to make mistakes and then find them? In general, you should never trust the user. You should always be sanitizing and escaping things on your website. You should be reviewing the website, the plugin authors and who owns these plugins. They do change hands from time to time, and the new owners may not have the same ideals and mindset as the old ones. So you never know, they might even sell it to the highest bidder who may have the intention of just putting malware on your website. Don't be naive that these things can't happen to you. Another example of this is in the WordPress user system of just making everybody an administrator. It's very easy to just give someone the highest level of access so that they can do the tasks that they need. But why do they need this level of access? Think about what the minimum level of access they need to accomplish the task at hand. Is there someone else that has the ability to do that task? Or is there a better workflow that you can use? In this example, perhaps we shouldn't be giving the Drupal contributor and the Joomla contributor administrator access to our website. They would probably be better off as a custom role, maybe as a guest writer or something of that nature. WordPress has a very flexible capabilities API that you can use to create your own roles to really fine-tune that access to only things that you need them to be able to perform. The reality is that WordPress is secure, but it depends on the decisions that we make. Like any other software, it's only as secure as the people that use it. People that use and build software are insecure. A continuously secure site is a people problem just as much as it is a technical one. We need to relate our experiences in the physical world to the digital world. How we think about security, how we apply it to our websites. I think about a website as a shore, and it's constantly being hit by waves of traffic and attacks and changes. The state of the security at any given point in time is the result of the decisions and judgments that we make. We need to assess our risk tolerance based on the environmental factors and even our mood on that day to decide what we are comfortable with for the security of our site. Things like, are we using good hosting? Do we have properly configured SSL certificates? Are we using strong passwords or 2FA or single sign-on? Are we using trustworthy plugins or themes? Backing up our website? Up to date? Are we proactively scanning for coding standards issues? These are all things that we need to think about in addition to the human elements of being more secure. Thank you.